It's Wednesday, March, 25th now? Hopefully your days are flying by. Yeah, March 25th. Wow. This is Voltage Control Lab. We are getting into some live music production today. We'll see again how the Ableton streaming and all of these things work together. We've got a cat sleeping behind me underneath the dancing baby. We got a cat on my lap right now, and another one sleeping in the back. And oh, actually, no, there's only two in here. I don't know where the third one is, but maybe we'll see him. What's up, Devlin? What's up, Astrofish? Grant, Analog Assailant. Thanks for joining us again. Here we are. So I figure today we'll make a track together. And G Dizzle, what's up? And we'll see what comes out of it. You guys can tell me what to do. If you have suggestions, if you have genre ideas, tools that we can use, we'll see how this flows. This is the first time doing this, and I think let's keep it interesting. This is Xena in my lap. Hi, what are you doing? All right. What's up, Wambra? Ocheri. Am I saying that right? Ocheri? Okay, we got Nyan Cat up here. Constantly overdoing it with the GIFs bit by bit. Techno, techno, techno. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking for this episode. I think that could be something interesting and give us a lot of weird sounds that we can make inside and if we want to outside of the box. Yeah, you're a good boy. So, okay, yeah, this cat is a lush. Okay, so where should we start? Let's get over to the Ableton view. By the way, before we miss the opportunity, voltagecontrollab.com. One of my goals in the very near future is to make that the easy landing place for the live stream and everything. I don't know why I haven't done that already. Just try not to overdo it every day. I gotta be downloading Nyan Cat gifs and dancing babies, so I got other priorities, if you know what I'm saying. But the website, there's an email address there. We're on Twitter at vcontrollab. We're on Instagram at Voltage Control Lab. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, everything is at Computo, Computo, on Spotify, SoundCloud, all that jazz. So if you want to go show some support, that'd be dope. I appreciate the yeah, all the clicks, all that business. So okay, let's do it. Let's get into some live music production. This is going to be a tightrope walk. We'll see what happens. I'm going to move your chat down here and try not to forget about. Okay, wait. It's getting weird to handle here. There we go. Okay. Windows systems. All right. So we got pretty much a blank slate. Maybe I'll just explain real quick. On every track, default tracks. Hey, what's up, Mark? On all my default tracks, I have a channel strip for mixing. I usually have this completely disabled for the production process, but it's kind of in there. And every time I add a new track, that track comes in with the channel strip. And you can set that up just by putting whatever you want on an audio or MIDI track, and then right-click and select Save as Default Audio Track up here on that actual track name, right? So I did that with my MIDI and audio tracks, and every time I add one of those, now I get um, my audio effect rack that has my maybe default selection for mixing effects, saturation, EQ, compression, a little bit more EQ, and the limiter. So if you see that and you're like, why is that on there? Then understood. And we'll probably try to like Eldo Abraham. What's up, man? Um, or ma'am. I don't want to assume your gender. So I might have to be freezing and flattening things to kind of maintain CPU. We'll see how this goes. But where do we start? If we're making a techno track, what do we ask ourselves first? What's the tempo? Maybe? You tell me. What's the techno tempo? What's our tempo today, anyway? Techno could maybe be a wide range of things. In fact, maybe a useful exercise would be to say, go to the de facto um, information information source and see techno. Let's just Google it. Let's see what Google tells us is the tempo for techno. Probably going to give us a yep. There's the Wikipedia article. Even over here under the music genre um, tab that we sometimes get, it tells us right here central. It's a repetitive beat generally produced for use in a continuous DJ set. Whatever. This is a lot of gobbledygook. It's not all about that, I suppose. It's more about the feeling and the energy and all that shit, right? This is music, not theory. But it does tell us a little bit about the typical characteristics of the style. It might even tell us a little bit about the origins of the style, the other related genres. And if, again, we want to be good at what we do, then it might benefit us to uh, do some basic research. Is my screen all blurred out? What the F? Maybe it's just low resolution. Fuck. It says excellent connection. Don't apply to me, YouTube. Let me know if it's all blurred out where you're at. Some weird YouTube thing, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we might want to read this article. It might tell us a lot of information that we could use, like the tempo, 120 to 150, the commonly heard instruments, right? The origins of the day, of the sound. The it's even telling us specific drum machines to use here. What's up, David? Bropa. We're making a track from scratch. We're doing a techno track. Let me know if the video looks okay. Looks fine. Okay, maybe it's just this browser. Anyway, we're seeing a lot of information in here, and some of this might be weird things going on here. Okay, some of these things might be for later reading, right? Like we don't have to sit here and read all about the origins of techno necessarily. Though again, it's going to be something that we will want to do if we want to make this thing our own. We need to listen to a lot of examples. We need to take some reference from what the style might be. Only if we want to deliver something that the fanatics will instantly say, now that's techno, right? It would behoove us to know those things. And as even if we make something completely out there and call it techno, it might be in our benefit to be able to speak to why we would call it that, especially in the face of people who might be fanatics and might think they know everything about the style. Okay, so research for now complete. We know we're somewhere between 120 and 150. Let's see. I see 133 in there. Let's ask the executive decision maker. Um, hold on. Is 133 a good tempo for techno? Forget it. What about 135? Why not? Problem solved. Okay, back to the desktop, and we'll set our project to 135. What else did it say in there? It said a repetitive beat, right? That's another one of our maybe commonly found things in a techno track. Um, shall we set this to let's program a four on the floor kick drum pattern, right? House music, techno, all this stuff. We'll go one, two, three, four. Okay, so we have a pattern, right? Four MIDI notes. Now it needs something to play. Maybe we'll find somewhere in between house and techno, right? Maybe we'll see. Who knows? Okay, wait. Here we go. There we go. Yeah. I swear this mic stand. Gonna get a better mic stand someday. Okay, so let's make a kick drum. I want to make a techno kick drum, and should we do it with a synth or shall we do it with a sample? Now, mind you, I'm not going to use just like a techno kick drum sample if we do it with a sample. I want to use. I like to find like the weakest, shittiest kick drum in the library and turn that thing into something good. So we could either make it from scratch or we could make it from a really shitty sample and turn it into something whomping. You tell me, what would you rather see? We could maybe employ our lessons from the last 2 days talking about envelopes and FM synthesis and operator. Maybe we should do that because we might need a second kick drum anyway. So maybe let's make a couple kick drums. That's maybe the first thing. Nice short attack kick. Do it with a synth. All right, let's do it with a synth, and then we'll make another one because techno I find often has a few kick drums, probably no snare drums, right? More kick drums than most other drums. So okay, let's make something out of operator for the time being. Okay. Um, Operator is the built-in FM synth in uh, uh, what are we using here? Ableton. There we go. Okay. Um, shitty with the processing. That's where you get something good. We're gonna do that next. I promise. Okay. So let's do the basic, uh, you know, setup that we would expect for a kick drum. What would that be? Maybe we start with a sine wave. Okay. Probably want to, go down in the low frequency range, C1, something like that. Okay. And let's dial this envelope, the volume envelope of operator A, into some more percussive like envelope shape. A fast attack, relatively short decay, right? Longer than the attack, of course, but something that sounds like a drum rather than like a long ringing bell or something like that, right? If we have this set really long, okay, we'll try it there. Let me know if you hear any weird crackling, just so I get the info. Okay, and then conveniently, operator has a built-in pitch envelope. Okay, so we can just turn this on. This is kind of a weird design for the pitch envelope. I don't really like the way that they put this together, but at least the visual. But we have kind of this middle point, which is the pitch that we play, and then it jumps up and then back down to that pitch. Or we could dial this down into the negative range so it goes down and then back up to the pitch we play. But we want it to probably go up, and That's going to be set by the peak. We can just maybe double click these and reset them. The initial as well. A little noise to the attack with another oscillator. Okay, I like that idea. Let's see where that takes us. And we can just let this play. So to get this thing to start actually doing any pitch modulation, we have to turn up the pitch envelope knob. And we probably want to shorten the decay because we want to hear that pitch change before the volume disappears, when we only have like a half a second tone here to begin with. So, and let's see, let me just make sure this isn't like blowing you guys out of the water. Okay, that looks like a little bit loud. So I'm going to bring the level down on the master. Generally never touch the master when you're producing, but you want that to be at 0 so you can really see what the actual output level is, but I'm going to break the rules for you guys. Okay. So let's shorten the decay a little bit more on this kick drum. The shorter the decay, the more of a punch we're going to get. And if I turn this up to 100%, we're going to get the full octave jump and then back down, right? We could take that peak higher. Get a little bit more of that punch. We could shorten that decay so much that it's just like a little at the beginning of that kick. Turn up my headphones a little bit. What's up, Noise Bleeder? Les. Who else is in there? Anyone else new? I think I said hi to everyone else. All right, well, let's keep it going with this kick drum. We're getting there. We got the basics now, right? We got a, maybe my voice is a little loud. I don't know. You guys tell me. We got we got the volume envelope. We got a pitch envelope, right? We could really put a knock on that. What's up, Brian? How you doing? I like a little bit of the thump in there. And then, hey, maybe we take this whole thing down a couple notes. We could maybe also extend these. Let's go down an octave. Oh, that's a little too much. Okay, that's getting there. Okay, so that's okay, right? We can maybe start to work with that. What if we add or experiment with a little bit of FM? Let's try this out. Sweet, thanks for the feedback, guys. I appreciate that. So, someone was saying a little extra noise at the beginning with another oscillator. And we could do that with this operator B, which is going to frequency modulate operator A, right? There's definitely going to be some side chaining once we get some other sound in here. But what if we make this noisy, attacky bit happen with a little bit of FM synthesis? What if we dial this operator B envelope to be a nice, short, really tiny burst, right? Without it. So what are we doing? We're just we have 10 or 12 milliseconds of frequency modulation at the very beginning of the note, right? The note itself lasts, 500, 600 milliseconds. But the attack is measured in this tiny, tiny little window of, hey, cat, what are you doing back there? Of frequency modulation. Stop that. Come here. got the third cat in here now. Depends on how much we want of that. We could have that an octave up. Just going back to the pitch envelope a little. We could choose a different wave shape for this. Could use actual white noise. But I like that. I like that sine wave. It's a nice little chunky bump in there. So we could play around with the decay time too, but you know, just like the pitch envelope, which is, you know, modulating the frequency in a sense. It's not frequency modulation just with the pitch envelope, but it's obviously affecting the frequency. And on top of that, it's also, I mean, it's affecting the frequency of both of our operators, but it's also that nice little chunk in the front end from that frequency modulation that's just happening in that super light window. So we might pick our key if we're going to use a key. I mean, I think we can go very loose with this if we're doing techno. How many elements do we need? I think that's another important question. Let's make another kick drum really quick while we're at it. Let's get rid of this audio track. Maybe we will. Oh wait, you know what? Before we move along, let's give this some more oomph. I'm gonna put a saturator on here, and I know I mentioned I have a saturator in my channel strips. I use Supercharger from Native Instruments for my. It's just kind of like my go-to saturator for mixing because it can get pretty dirty, but it can also do some very nice light saturation. It also has a compressor built into it, but I don't use it for that. I just use it for saturation. However, right now I'm thinking more on the sound design level, and so I'm not really, you know, I save this stuff for the end when we're just trying to just barely spice it up a little bit. So we're going to play with the saturator now, and I'm just going to increase the gain a bit, turn down the output level to counter the inevitable volume increase from the overdrive, and then we could try a couple of different algorithms in here as well. Notice we're keeping like a good distance from 0 dB too, right? Like we're creating this nice space, and that's going to leave a lot of extra room for other stuff in the mix. So we will probably go up, but we're going to dial it back. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. We could do some parallel saturation. What's up, Sarah? Now we're just getting into making some techno. We're making a kick drum. And so, how's that sound? What do you guys think? Let's go with that for now. Okay. So we synthesized the tone, right? We started with basically a sine wave and a volume envelope, and then we added a pitch envelope, right? So pretty simple patch from there. It was just the opening it up in operator, starting with that built-in sine wave, reducing the sustain. The tempo is at 135 right now. We I asked the room, and then I asked the executive decision maker which tempo to use. So volume envelope on the sine wave, right? That's our main envelope, and then a pitch envelope. We turned that on, and we turned up the percentage, and we turned up the peak value in the middle section here. Let me. Wasn't sure if I should zoom in for this one, but might as well. Okay. So yeah, with the peak value in the middle here, and then we added a little bit of extra spice on it with this frequency modulating operator B, right? Um, we could do some high and low cuts. I consider that more on the mixing end. So I would maybe come back later. You might notice, whoops, in my EQ8 here in the mix channel strip, it's already kind of got the highs and lows turned on, the high and low cuts, right? The high pass and low pass filters, in a sense. And so I can do all of that shaping. I might do it if I feel it. You know, maybe we should turn it on and see what's coming through. But seems like it's pretty good. Okay, so I consider that though more on the mixing end of things. So now, don't get me wrong. If you hear it with those elements, then do it. If that's how the sound seems like it should be to you, then of course do it in the sound design process or in the very beginning if that's what you're, you know, if that's what's inspiring the process to start, then yeah, and that's how you hear the sound. Absolutely, do it. But um, I tend to save that for later, right? That to me is sometimes a little bit more of the cleanup, and I want to keep the signal chain a little bit clear. So now we might do a little bit of that after the saturator too. Like in general, the saturator is going to beef up the harmonic material. And so, sure, we might put a filter after that or an EQ after that to kind of dial back what's happening. But um, you know, I think it's more of a feel thing at that point. Like, does it feel like the sound needs it, or is that something that might just end up being done in the cleanup? And that's kind of where the mix comes in to me. That's really where I kind of reassess everything, and I try to just make sure the sounds are as close in there as I can get them. So, okay, so let's now try this similar thing with the weakest drum in the pack. Let's see what we can find here. Let's go into the built-in drum hits. This is all stuff in the Ableton library. And let's see if we find any of these. Okay, those are loud. Let's turn this down. Sorry about that. Okay. Some pretty walloping kick drums in there. Ah. Oh. That's a sad kick drum. Okay, so 2020 D D kick 8. That one's pretty sad. Oof, that one's really sad. Cool samples, but that one or that one seems like the ones to go with. 2020 DD kick 8 or a kick Remo 1. Which one? Who votes for which? Terrible, terrible kick drums. But we're going for terrible. I want the assiest kick drum I can get because we're gonna beef it up. We're gonna make it good. I don't know. Maybe those sound good to you guys. I don't know. To me, they're kind of sad. But that's what I'm going for this particular experiment. So you guys tell me which one, or else I'm gonna. All right, I'm gonna ask the executive decision maker. Let's should we choose the? It is 2020. Should we use the 2020 D kick 8? Oh wait, it's no fun if you can't see it. 2020 D kick 8. Never. Okay, A kick remo it is. So we're just going to drag this. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Let's take that down here. And yeah, it's kind of an acoustic kick drum, right? Not very techno, but that's where we're going, right? That's why we want this thing. So let's just duplicate this clip. Oops, wrong button. There we go. Okay, and we'll select all of our notes. We'll go up a couple of octaves. Okay, that's pretty sad. Okay, what can we do to this? How can we make this more interesting? I think a couple things. One, instead of simpler, we could throw it into sampler, which is a little bit more feature rich sampler. But even in here, we might come in. We might change the amplitude sustain. We can click on the pitch tab where we get our pitch envelope. This isn't where the fun really comes in, though. This is kind of like, we're cleaning it up a little bit for other kind of use. Now, a couple ways we could go here. Compressor, for sure. EQ and a compressor might make this seem a little bit more hot. We might be able to basically create an input sample, something like that. Cut the high frequency. Could even turn on this filter envelope. Right? At a certain point, we're kind of using the filter, actually. If we are cranking up the resonance like this, we're going to be at a point using the filter more to generate a tone than we are even going to be using so much the sample. We could switch to one of these overdriving filters, and all of a sudden, we're really going to be coming into and in a sense, G Dizzle, this is kind of what we're doing, because with a resonant filter, if it will self-resonate, self-oscillate, it's basically generating an additional sine wave. This isn't maybe the best filter for that, but especially overdriven. You hear that in the background, though. That's basically a sine wave underneath or on top of now this kick drum. Now we can't even hear the kick drum. Now we turned off the filter envelope, and we're really just drastically filtering that kick and then boosting the resonance. So we're basically getting a sine wave, a resonating sine wave out of this. So that's one way to maybe get something interesting out of this. I like the low rumble of it. Yeah, once you get that resonance going, we really hear the thump. But that thump's going to be defined by the frequency, so we're going to lose out certainly on a lot of that material. Oh, add an octave pedal. Interesting idea. Two ways we could do that. One is we could actually even just duplicate the the notes. Let's turn off draw mode. Right, we could just bring a second set of notes up here to C4. Something like that. We could use something like Guitar Rig, which has an octave pedal built into it. That might be a fun way to get a whole lot of additional tonal shape on a shitty kick drum like this also. Let's just get rid of this mix chain for a moment. Okay, here's Guitar Rig. Actually maintaining a pretty reasonable CPU level right now. So we can come in here to pitch, and this is a pitch. Oh wait, here, we can just try the octaver. I think this is an octave down though. Let's see. Let's try the pitch pedal. This we can, I think, use max shift -12, let's go +12. We're getting into some interesting can we shift the resonant filter up? We can in terms of using the envelope here. Whoa. Yeah, that's a little bit much. We're resonating a little too hot there. Oh, no, it's Guitar Rig doing that. A lot of that. No, it's not. It's just way too loud. Sorry, my friends. I don't know about the octave. Okay, well, we've maybe found a couple of things. Of course, another thing we could do, let's turn off the filter completely for a minute. We could use some sort of distortion. Could have done this in whatchamacallit, Guitar Rig. Shorten up that pitch envelope. Oh, yeah, getting a little extra loud now again. So, you know, kind of tracks pitch like any sampler. It tracks pitch within a certain range. But, you know, another thing we could do, maybe we could duplicate this. And we could use this as kind of like an exciter for something like Corpus, which is a resonator effect, right? So what if we, oops, let's not mute it. Let's just do that. So I've just really shortened the decay time. Let's make sure that the filter is, let's turn off the filter. So we'll just use like the shortest bit on the front end of it. In fact, we could even use like right there, this little click effectively. You can just end the sample right there. One cycle. Okay, and there's this great effect in Ableton called Corpus. This is kind of like rings from mutable instruments in the modular world. This is a resonator effect. So we go from this to this. might sound familiar if you've used what's it, Elements, Rings. If you've been playing around with the VCV rack and the Audible Instruments collection in there, the resonator and things like this, right? Um, this is getting into physical modeling, but in this world, we use one signal exciter, right? Which is this waveform that we have here. This is just like a little click, right? We all heard that. And then we put this device afterwards, which itself includes a complicated behind the panel signal routing and synthesis engine, or really a couple of engines, because we have this whole selection um, of algorithms, for lack of a better term. I think, is that what they call them in physical modeling? Probably not. They probably call them physical attributes, instruments, physical devices. I don't know what we call it. I probably should, but we're starting on beam, and you hear this kind of sounds like a bell. There's a tuning. We could probably get this to sound kind of like a drum, especially if we play with the material and the brightness controls. Okay, there we go. Right. We could switch this to a membrane, which is like legitimately meant to model a drum head. Right, so we have these controls here. These kind of give us the feeling of adjusting a real physical device rather than tweaking oscillators and filters and technical synth devices. So it might feel a little bit more approachable than a normal synth, something like that. But I kind of like that beam, actually. So we can also, in Corpus, sidechain from a MIDI source. So let's maybe select this track 3. And if we turn on frequency, yeah, really nice quick access to a lot of percussive sounds with these types of devices. So would be great to get like a pitch modulation of that, but we might not be able to do that with this patch. So what we're going to do is we're going to freeze this track. We're going to flatten this. It's going to turn this all into audio. And there we go. We got that kick drum in audio form in a loop, right? And create a new MIDI track. We'll take this audio, we'll drag it down into this MIDI track. Oh, come on. And it's going to put it inside of sampler. And now we can just take one instance of this kick drum. Let's move our, oops, that's not a MIDI clip. Let's move our MIDI clip back over there. Okay, so there's our audio. And here, now we can add a pitch envelope here. Might totally mutilate the sample, but you can also shorten it. We could shorten our notes. Oops. still. It's like, what the? There we go. Ah, yeah, there we go. Much better. Okay, so we got a couple kick drums. Let's build something else. What else should we add to this? Maybe some sort of weird atmospheric element. Um, Granular synthesis, perhaps. Shall we try something like that? We could use granulator, but I like to do this by hand. Let's throw a sampler onto this track, and let's find a weird audio sample. Let's see. I have a bunch of weird old sound effects. Let's see what we can find in here. Coffee can coin movement. I like that idea. Oh, yeah, we're going to use that. Let's see what that gives us. I've never used this before, but I like the idea of coin movement. All right, so we're going to take a micro loop of this. I'm going to turn on looping, this sustain mode function, and now we have a loop. I'm going to link the loop and sample start time, start and end times. Reverb on the bass drum? Maybe. I like to use that especially for like building into a new section or something like that. Maybe we'll build that in a second. Okay, so let's turn off this thing and we've got a loop. Let's shorten that loop even more. Okay, getting there. We're going to turn on LFO 2 and 3. I'm going to randomize both of these LFOs. Actually, before we do that, let's just assign them both to, whoa. Let's just assign them both to the things we need to control. Loop start and loop length. And now if I play a note and I raise these, you can see now the loop position and length are going to be changing. And we're going to randomize that action. We don't want to do that in a sine wave shape. We want to also make that happen more rapidly than that. And we're probably going to take a smaller loop as well. Let's increase the volume a bit. In fact, we might just go ahead and throw a compressor after this. And let's see. Let's lower those values. All right, let's take a reverb. Throw it in here afterwards. Okay, we could probably just increase the gain here a little bit more and maybe repurpose this compressor in a moment. Let's see. I think we're still going to need a compressor. Probably want to maintain that in a very slim. There you go. That's a little more consistent. Let's take a look at velocity. There, okay, volume to velocity. Okay, so no velocity sensitivity right now. It's kind of a long sample. That's kind of where the complication is coming from. Let's unlink these. Let's just shorten the sample to something like that. So I'm setting my start and end flags, and then I'm going to crop. And now these percentage values that I'm using to assign are going to be a much smaller actual amount of time over here. We can relink the start points. So that modulation at 3 or 2% is going to mean a much tighter area of modulation than we were getting out of a 15-second long sample when this is now less than a second worth of that, okay? And that means a little bit more uniformity in this stuff. So, okay. So we're going to use this compressor to do some control. Not the most happy with that compressor, but it's going to work for now. And we'll put another one over here after the reverb. I like the idea there, Eldo, of some distortion as well. Maybe we could try the pedal effect. Or you know what might be interesting? I got these Arturia effects preamps. So we could try one of these preamps. Let's see if this just like blows the CPU out of the water. Hopefully not. They seemed pretty consistent when I'd used them before. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, let's try playing through this. Oh, getting some weird distortion now. Let's So we're kind of using this preamp emulator, right? This is by boosting the input gain, we're introducing some of that distortion, right? We're getting a little bit of heat. Let me just listen to this again, and we could compare. Right, not much volume change, but at least in terms of actual dB. But the intensity of the sound is certainly, uh, certainly something happening there. So then let's do that side chaining, right? Let's get some. This is an otherwise kind of flat signal. It's just kind of droning on, and that's okay, but might be a little bit more exciting if we um, got a little bit of motion happening there. So now we could still do more to this sound, but let's get that action happening. Which kick drum should be our main kick drum, I guess? Should it be it's just that? Oh, something happened there. Let's go with that. Or I think that one. This one still needs a little bit of color. Let's go with that one for now. That kind of sound good together, but okay, let's sidechain from operator. And let's maybe oops, didn't mean to record there. Let's just go back to yeah. Now, some people like to use a silent kick drum track. Maybe they like a very punchy, short bit of compression. Um, I learned this process years back from my coworker at Native Instruments, Jason Emsley, prolific minimal techno producer, and he talked about how we can use the release here about to kind of create the effect of a swing almost, right? The shorter the release, the faster the synth comes back in. We could really exaggerate that. And as we increase the release, kind of has this feeling of an extended swing, an extended eighth note. Here we kind of get that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and effect. Here it's more like 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. It's more like this shuffle effect that comes out of it. So and maybe we'll change up these patterns. We were just using the same pattern, but maybe we can like have some weird pattern in here. like overlapping patterns in techno, so maybe. Yes, that was the side chain. We took a compressor, and the compressor, when in side chain mode, looks to a certain channel, right? And then the attack and release, this is the envelope follower portion of the compressor. And this is watching that, the end of that sidechain signal. In fact, a better way to visualize this is this thing, this third tab at the very bottom, right? This is our kind of default mode. This is our soft knee view, and then this shows us actual the inverse gain reduction to the incoming signal. So here we'll see the kick drum pattern, and then as we lower the ratio, as we raise the threshold, right? This is the threshold. This is like this value here. And as we lower that threshold, we get more of that gain reduction, which is what we're seeing up here. This is the volume reduction. And then when we increase the ratio, that intensifies that volume reduction. Down further and further to... Yeah, the sidechain signal is basically what we're yeah, there's no sequence really. And the coin movement is just one long note. And all of the effect of this thing is coming from this. You know, we like the odd time signatures and the overlapping of the signals. No, it's exact same. It's inverse to the operator kick drum pattern, which is just the quarter notes. So this thing is just going to follow those quarter notes coming from that first kick drum. Okay, I'm not liking this kick drum. What if we take this whole thing up a couple of semitones? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's kind of how the side chaining is operating, right? It tracks the incoming signal from that kick drum, and it follows the shape of the rising and falling kick, right? And also notice, as we shorten the release time, you see that yellow gain reduction indicator. That's kind of showing the inverse volume change in response to the kick drum, right? If we shorten the release time, that shape changes too. We come all the way back to full volume faster, in direct inverse to the kick drum shape, if we keep that release time low. But if we extend it a little bit, you can see it curves that shape a little bit more. Yeah, if you want to really get a grasp on compression and side chaining, this is the best view to use, and not all compressors have this or any of these visuals. So they might just have a couple knobs and a VU meter or something. So I find this compressor to be really useful for that, you know, kind of learning to really understand the compressor from a more deep perspective. Envelope follower automatically reduces the amplitude of the kick. That's if the kick drum is actually routed through the compressor, which it's not, right? It's actually just coming in as a side chain indication. So the actual kick drum over here shouldn't be changed in volume. Yeah, in modular, we're not going to get nearly as much visual feedback, but that's it, you know, in sense, it should work the same way. And you know, in modular, also sometimes we use other ways to get the sidechain effect. We might use an envelope going into a VCA, but the VCA is opened up, and so we're using the envelope in kind of a reverse shape, kind of like what we were just seeing there in the gain reduction. Basically, just creating a false side chain in a sense. That's how sometimes it's done as well. But okay, now we got this kind of kick drum thing turned into an interesting beat. This definitely needs some mixing cleanup there. But again, I kind of leave that to the end. I kind of go along down the process knowing that certain things will be reapproached, right? I think maybe the the process might be worth considering at this point. Uh, you know, how do we create a track and get further and further down the line to something that's finished? Um, that kind of means we need landmarks, just like our sound design exercise the other day. So, um, the what am I trying to say? I was reading your comments and I totally lost my train of thought. Anyway, let's create another MIDI track. Let's get something a little bit more techno in here. Now, I think for something like the tone generating portion of this, maybe we'll go back to operator for a minute, like the actual melodic content, I suppose, if there's such a thing in techno. Um, operator is really useful for this because I think I mean, for my taste of techno anyway, we could go more melodic. That's fine, but I like some weird microtonal, atonal shit when I'm hearing techno. I want something to take me out, and so a couple of tools might be useful for this. One is maybe playing with operator with one of our operators in fixed mode so that whatever notes we send into it, you know, because especially in a DAW, our system is really tightly tied to semitonal tuning, right? The every clip is on a piano roll, and everything is going to sound kind of like it's in a keyboard, right? And if we have these things not in fixed mode, then it's going to sound very pitchy. It's going to sound very much like a traditional musical instrument in its pitch relationships. But if we put one of these in fixed mode, every time a note is played or a note changes, the relationship between one operator and the other operator changes, and the frequency relationship changes. And it's rarely going to be one where the the frequency relationships are as we uh, commonly see them in digital FM synthesis. Yeah, unquantized, right? Not using a quantizer. I think people over prioritize quantizers, but of course they might be necessary for getting the more lyrical, memorable, singable material. But um, techno doesn't always fall under that particular category. And just you know, for everyone who came in late, we're doing techno today. Next week on Wednesday, we'll do something totally different. Won't be techno. Maybe it'll be lo-fi hip hop or whatever else. Baseline. We could make a baseline track. I don't know if you guys know baseline, UK baseline. Um, I think you were saying we need a baseline, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, another really cool thing to work with in the techno sphere with operator or in Ableton would be the Max for Live mono sequencer, which is a 16 step, one channel sequencer. And it's got some cool randomization functions, and we can change the lengths of patterns independently to get weird and interesting changes. So if we hit play, let's just get rid of the clip that's up here because there's nothing in that. Okay, maybe we'll keep these other parts for a moment. Okay, so we got a 16-step pattern. We have pitch control. You can just draw something in. We can just hit random. We have a conformed scale function if we want to use it, but we don't have to use it. Randomize has a percentage, so if we want to keep close to something that we've already dialed in, we can just keep that percentage very low and it'll randomize close to that thing. Maybe a little more than that. Right, so yeah, maybe next time we'll do lo-fi hip hop. Okay, if we don't like any of those, we can. I think we can clear this thing. How do we clear this thing? Reset. Oh no, that's resetting the clip. Let's. Oh, there we go. Flat. There's this little flatten button here. Okay. Just to make this a little bit more sequencer friendly, let's come over to that operator patch and we're going to change that operator A envelope to be a no sustain envelope. We could take this up an octave too. Might not want this to be a 16-step pattern. That's very eighth note, or not eighth note. It's very, predictable, right? What if we made this a 9-step pattern? We can add a rest. Down here at the very bottom is the gate messages. Notice it follows a different pattern length. So we could make it the same pattern. So really cool though. This is like the whole point of the mono sequencer is we can make these different lengths. So it overlaps, right? You can see the play header here on each one. We can do velocity sensitivity. Of course, we need to tell operator to be velocity sensitive. Let's come back. Let's get rid of this channel strip for the time being. Okay, and let's tell operator velocity. Might not want that to be full 100% velocity sensitivity. We can put in like an octave shift. We can change note duration. bass line's coming, I promise. We can even add ratcheting. Okay, and of course, from here we can start playing around with the sound, start automating things inside of the actual patch. This is just notes so far, right? Maybe put a delay on this funky operator thing here. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? Getting a little grungy. Also, there's multiple patterns. So we could take this thing, we could copy this pattern, go to pattern 2, paste it in here, and randomize it some more. Very clean. Let's do the bass line. I think we need to give Noise Bleeder what he wants here. Now, what key are we in? I mean, I think we need to do this by ear to a certain extent. So, what should we do our bass line with? How about Serum? Uh-oh, I better open Splice, because otherwise I'm gonna get the screen of shame. Okay, let's come down here. There's Serum. Let's put this on a new MIDI track. Yeah, sounds clean to me. Still needs obviously some arrangement, because we don't have much in terms of a shape to this thing yet. But That's all right. Oh, you know, one other thing we could try, one other thing to mention in all of this is when we are using that MIDI mono sequencer, it might be in our best interest. Let's come back over here. It might be in our best interest to capture what's coming out of it because um, this is a complex device. It's built in Max for Live, and yeah, exactly what you're saying there, David. We're gonna maybe be um, uh, maybe be a little bit better off if we record what's coming out of that thing, and that way we can tweak it a bit. So what we can do is come over here to a new MIDI track. We'll tell this new MIDI track to look to what's coming out of that channel 5 operator channel. This would be a great time to rename some of these things so that it's easier to keep track of. And we're going to tell it to take MIDI from post effects on channel 5, right? Post MIDI effects specifically. And that's a MIDI effect, right? This mono sequencer is a MIDI effect tool. It's in the space that a MIDI effect would fall before the instrument. And any note information is going to be sent through this and out. We could even use this in a sense, as I believe, as an arpeggiator. But you can see here now it's getting MIDI notes. If we set it to pre-effects, you can see there another no indicator lighting up. But post-effects, turn MIDI monitor on. And we can also just get rid of this channel script. And we'll just record the MIDI that's coming out of that thing. You see it's kind of changing. It's evolving. Never quite the same. Okay. And after 15 bars now, we can put this right back over here on our operator channel. We can tell the operator channel, turn off your mono sequencer and just play this sequence now. All of the octave shifting, all of the ratcheting, all of the gate on and offs, all of that has been recorded in the form of the resulting notes that come out based on the patterns and all those things and how they overlap. So this might not be the full length of that pattern. We had like one pattern that's 9 times one that's the gate pattern that's 12 times velocity pattern that was 5 times. So we got like, 9, 8, 5, 16, 15, and 12 step patterns. So that could potentially overlap for a long, long, long time before it ever really truly repeats. But that's okay. We don't have to like just consistently, constantly generate, never repeating material. This is already going to feel pretty complicated. Oh, now we can turn off our sequencer. Okay, so we got that thing. We recorded the MIDI out, and then we replaced that device. We could even get rid of it now completely. We've gotten the benefit of it. We've made something interesting out of it just by randomizing. Again, it's kind of low in frequency. Maybe we could, whoops, we could take all of that stuff. No, it's actually recording the notes. It's recording the results of all of those patterns. So all that it spits back out is effectively just note information, which might also include. Oh no, questions are all good. Which might include velocity, right? We had some velocity mapping in there, and you can see each note has its own velocity. There's certain notes that are ratcheting, right? So all that's really coming out is note and velocity, note on and off information, all of that stuff. It's just basically the results of that sequence, that layered bit of sequencing that came out in the form of MIDI notes. So there's not going to be any like automation or parameter, MIDI envelopes or what are they? Clip envelopes in Ableton, they call them, which is kind of like our automation inside of a MIDI clip. We could do that too, but out of the mono sequencer is going to come basically note information and the timing, the velocity, things like that related to the notes. All of that tied to each individual note that it plays or it tells the instrument to play. Um, so we're just really capturing that bit so that we would not have to keep that mono sequencer in the chain. And funky things sometimes happen with complicated Max for Live devices with Ableton, where you'll shut down your project and save it, and then you'll reload it, and maybe the pattern will be gone, and that sucks. So that's a good reason to be trying to capture some of this stuff as you go. Exactly. Standard MIDI information is coming out of it, though. Okay, so we got this thing going. Let's come in here and make a bass in Serum. Okay. And maybe we could go back and grab another one of those weird samples that I was looking at earlier from my sample library. Eating chips. Let's drag that to our oscillator in Serum. And this is going to create a wavetable out of the sample of eating chips. And this might look and sound weird or bad. Excuse me. Only one way to find out, though. So it's doing its thing. It's processing the sample, which might make the whole thing fart for a second. Let's see. I think tomorrow, by the way, we will do some hardware FM, modular FM with the Eurorack, talking about how to make some of these shreddy techno sounds. Why not just, play off what we're already doing and get some of these things in the hardware world? Okay, so we've got a sample here, and it looks like maybe that sample was a little bit of nothing in the beginning of it. So let's see. Ooh, how about fax machine? Let's try this. Oh, shit. Serum's taking some time to do this process, I guess. Let's ask the executive decision maker with Dancing Baby in the background and Nyan Cat to my right. Should we do hardware techno tomorrow? Should we do not hardware techno. Good. Thanks for catching me on that one, executive decision maker. Should we do hardware FM with Eurorack tomorrow? Definitely. All right. That's the confirmation I needed. Boom. Back to the desktop. Back to the chat. Hardware FM sounds interesting. Good. All right. And fax machine, come on, give me some sample material here. This is there we go. There's a little bit of something. Okay, so we'll find Oh, there's some stuff in there. It's just very, very low amplitude. Okay, so we're going to take some of these chunks. All this has done basically is split that sample of this fax machine, or the first bit of it anyway, excuse me, into 252 different wavetable samples. And they're just really quiet right now. So some of them, there's probably not any material even there, like these first 50 or 60 or so. There's very little anyway. So what we can do is we will come over here. There's these menus up here. Oh, this is Serum. This was created by Steve Duda, who is well known in the software musical instrument world. Serum is probably the most popular plugin of the last, I would say, how long has it been around? Almost 8 or 10 years now. Super, maybe not 10 years, but getting there. Super popular tool. This is like the go-to synth for most young producers. I only know that. I'm not a young producer. I will leave that as it is. But the new generation is using Serum a lot, and I have to teach it, so that's why I have it. Okay, we're going to normalize each. Okay, this is going to normalize each one of these tiny chunks, which on some of them we might not see any difference, right? Like these ones. But if we come on down the line, there we go. Now we're seeing a little bit of some wave shapes, like that weird thing, right? Oh, the answering machine. This is the let me switch back here. This is the executive decision maker from Radio Shack. This is probably 35 to 38 years old, I would guess. It's an executive decision maker. It tells me what I should do and when. The entrepreneur's best friend. Tell me what to do. Mindless electronics from 35 years ago. Should we keep going with Serum? You tell me, executive decision maker. Possibly. Okay, well, good enough. Okay, Serum. If I play some notes now, and I select one of these wavetables, like this one. Okay, so we've got some tones. It's basically a random coin toss, yes. And by the way, I don't know if anybody has any interest in this, but I don't know why I didn't bring this up already. I made an executive decision maker Max for Live device. Where is it? I think it's an audio effect. Where did I put that? Oh, maybe I'll show it to you another time. I'm not going to waste your time with it now. Yeah, I made a Max for Live version of it in case anybody wants a Max for Live executive decision maker, Voltage Control Lab branded executive decision maker. Okay, so this is pretty cool. The issue is now, if we notice as I scan through the wavetables, the beginning and ends of the samples start at non-0 points. So when I turn the wavetable position knob while listening to the sound, it might not be smooth. We might get weird clicking. Now we're getting that proper fax machine tone. also the first end of these wavetables up to wavetable 28, there's nothing there. So maybe we'll choose wavetables 1 through 28, just shift select and then shift select, and we will remove beginning to selected. Yep, there we go. And then I think we can do, what is it, crossfade edges. I don't know, we might need to select all of these. Let's go all the way down to the end of the line. This is where Spherum really kicks up, because otherwise it's a 3 oscillator and a noise generator with 1 filter synth with some envelopes and LFOs that we can assign. But you look in something like this and the functionality explodes. Here we can really start to make interesting things happen. So let's try this. And then I think we might morph crossfade. Maybe we need to select all of these again. That didn't do it either. Well, there's one of these ways we can, I guess that morphs the beginning and ends, and then we can, what is it, crossfade edges again? No, fade edges. There we go. So now maybe we could attach an LFO to this. We'll just give it a very slim range. That's a little bit too chaotic. Maybe we choose one of these warp modes then. She'll do some bending. Yeah, that sounds about right. Let's put an LFO on that. Let's make this a monophonic instrument because this is going to be our bass. Let's turn on a little bit of glide. If we want this LFO to be bi-directional, notice it's just going up and back down from the current set position. If we come over to our matrix, here you see there's our LFO. It's assigned as the source to that warp knob. We have the amount controlled here. This is like that blue ring we were just looking at. And then the type determines whether it's bi-directional. So if we come back now, there it goes. Okay, let's listen to our track again. All right, what kind of pattern should we make for this thing? Maybe we also want this thing to do some interesting detuning or something. We could have this maybe set our pitch bend. Probably also want this thing to be sidechained, so let's throw a sidechain compressor on here again. Again, we'll take it from our kick drum. Got some weird latency in this audio interface, so correct our note timing. All right, getting something now. Let's take this bass line, let's duplicate it. Let's, so we have two versions now of the same clip. We're going to duplicate the loop length now. We're going into that second one. We're going to create a variation, a longer variation. So we'll duplicate the loop length. So now we've got kind of the same thing happening twice. And we can maybe alter. Ooh, I like that. Add an LFO that slightly detunes the melody. The on operator. Okay, let's do that in a second. The bass line, though, I want to tweak the bass line a little bit. Something like that. So that now we have something to evolve to, right? We have something to grow to in that bass line. And let's think about what we can do in terms of altering the tone, too. Maybe we low-pass filter this thing. Turn on some distortion over here. In fact, I'm just going to use another filter over here after the compressor. Ableton. Okay, and then let's do that slight LFO on the pitch over here. So the LFO, as soon as we turn it on, it's actually going to be mapped automatically. You can see here the LFO destination settings are operators A, B, C, and D. So we might need to lower the amount. Actually, that could be another cool thing to tweak this with, but we can set this to sync to the tempo if we want. But I like this low. See, sync sounds cool, but unsynced has, yeah, I like the evolving effect of the unsynced LFO. You know, probably pay to have some filters on some of these things. Like maybe we'll put a high pass filter on this coin granular synth thing that we made. Thanks, Bugard. Yeah, this is all stuff that we can tweak when we get to the arrangement stage. So, and I think maybe we'll do that next time. Maybe tomorrow we can do some FM hardware tweaking. Maybe we'll make another part to this, and then we'll finish this off. Something like that. We'll do some final experimentation in the form of looking at FM on the Euro rack, maybe on a complex oscillator. I think that would be a cool thing to do. Do it with the DPO from Make Noise. That's one of my favorite oscillators. Maybe we even make another kick drum with that, and then maybe that will be enough for us to do some arrangement. Maybe we'll. I think. Oh, okay. Before we go, let's do one other part, which should I think be maybe a hi hat, right? Some high frequency rhythm bit, right? So this is again like one of my favorite parts is to one of the favorite things about Ableton is the ability to do some of the things that we're about to do with the hi hat. Yeah, low pass and some AD envelope with faster gate sequencing, playing on the attack decay on the bass or on the that lead sound, that weird sequence we're doing. Let's come up here. Yeah, again, let's use operator, but this time as like a noise generator, okay? And so instead of sine waves now, we're going to choose white noise. In fact, I know some people really like looped noise, and we could talk about the difference between these things. Let's maybe make a quick quick pattern here. Okay. Okay, and we could even just make this like a 1-beat loop. And let's make this a little bit more hi-hat like. Okay, let's come to our envelope, lower the sustain. Now with the looped white noise, we can affect how the onset of the sound hits every time. With white noise, maybe a little bit more variable. With loop noise, we can use the phase and to a certain degree dial in a bit of that attack time. We come to another operator. We can frequency modulate the noise. In looped mode, we can do that. Okay, and okay, so some things that we might want to play with here would be loop decay. Or envelope decay, what am I talking about? If we come over to our LFO, we can turn it off of pitch manipulation, and we could look in our assignable menu here. No envelope decay. We do have time. What's time? Time is this knob right here, and this affects the timing of our decay lengths, our release times, all of the on every envelope. So we might be able to modulate that time control. And let's turn off retriggering, or else it's going to restart every time we play a note. Okay, so now using this built-in sine wave, the slow frequency sine wave, we're changing the length of our hi-hats. But what if we don't use a sine wave? What if we use sample and hold, which is like randomizing every beat? We could make this happen literally every 16th note and retrigger it. We could also just come back and offset our decay time. Could always come in and like change our hi-hat velocity. Of course, that means that we need to go back into operator and tell maybe these envelopes to respond to velocity. So we get this constantly evolving try to make it sound a little more dissonant. You know, I mean, with everything playing at once, it's not going to maybe seem like the most hard-hitting thing, but I think once we start arranging this thing, giving it some shape, adding a little bit of more, you know, musical business from outside the computer tomorrow, this might start to take off. So, yeah. Well, I think maybe we can glean a few lessons from this process. Hopefully that was interesting, and I know we did a lot in, 2 hours. Well, we did it, though. Let's come back to the main stuff here. Some Nyan Cat, some Dancing Baby. Yeah. Any questions? Any ideas for tomorrow? Well, if you have some ideas for tomorrow, shoot them my way. Whatever those ideas might be. Should we ask the executive decision maker one more question? Executive decision maker, should we arrange this track tomorrow? Never. Well, it's not right 100% of the time, I suppose. So, anyway, thanks you guys for sticking with me on this. Hopefully that made some sense. Hopefully this isn't the most horrible techno track. Maybe between now and tomorrow, we should all do a little bit of techno research and find maybe some reference tracks, tracks that we could use as almost a framework or a reference, in terms of um, where what are we missing? That type of a thing, right? Is there a way of replicating that looping hi hat noise in modular? Sure, absolutely. Noise. Oh, I see. Do you mean the looped white noise thing? You could sample white noise and into a um, modular sampler, Morphogene, Nebula, something like that. You could use something like the radio music, even with samples, noise samples built into it, and play with the start time of the sample. It's essentially what we're doing with the looping white noise in operator. So nothing too crazy about that. We could have done the same thing just in a sample based tool with a sample of white noise and kind of gotten in a similar direction with that, certainly. But um, I like the generated white noise. So, um, just another type of white noise source. But yeah, I would say white noise, pink noise sample material, and something like the radio music is probably how I would do it because that's my only sampler at the moment. But um, yeah, and then we could use sample and hold randomization to change our envelope decay, right? If we have an envelope decay or an envelope that has modulatable decay time, this is again one of the benefits of being in the DAW. We can modulate anything, even if the LFO doesn't want to do it. We can modulate it in here, right? We could find the instrument, then the oscillator A envelope decay time, and we could modulate that. But if we're on maths, we could modulate the fall time. Use the woggle bug to modulate the fall time if we want to keep it all make noise. But any stepped modulation that's going by the clock. So something like that. I think that's maybe the one way to play with that. If you have the woggle bug, you might even be able to use the noise from the woggle bug. That might be an interesting um, uh, signal source for something like that. But yeah, well, I think I need to go eat some food. And I hope you guys all are staying well, staying happy, staying positive, and um, well fed in this turbulent time. And I will be right back here tomorrow with you at noon again. Can't wait to see you all again. And if you have any recommendations, requests, show ideas, show suggestions, gift suggestions, GIF meaning like the graphics, not gift suggestions. Though if you have those, I'm all ears too. So yeah, tomorrow noon we'll do it all over again, and maybe we'll finish this all up. Hope you guys have a great day. All right, see you tomorrow.